Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. And today was the Las Vegas Grand Prix. It was very early in the morning. I actually had to get up at 6 a.m. to watch this race. It's a tough life, I know, but some sacrifices I am willing to make. Max Verstappen is your four-time champion. Congratulations. I hope you're happy. And unfortunately, Lando Norris's title campaign kind of ended on a damp squib. McLaren really off the pace in this race, in the lower end of the top 10. It was more of a surrender than a fight, unfortunately. But we do have some intrigue going into the final few races, or final two races in fact, because the Constructors' battle is still on. It's very close between Ferrari and McLaren, and Ferrari did a great job here. They almost blew it, but they did do a good job. There's 25 points between them, I think. So it's all to play for, and that at least keeps us going for the rest of the year. Red Bull are still in with a shout of the Constructors' title, but given Sergio Perez's lack of performance and the fact that even Max Verstappen hasn't been scoring as well as he has done previously, he was only 5th in this race, it's an outside shot for them at this point. It's not out of the realms of possibility, but it's difficult for Red Bull to win it now. So it's between Ferrari and McLaren. McLaren, who haven't won it since 1998, but even Ferrari haven't won the Constructors since, I think, 2008? 2007? 2008? It's been a while for both teams. So it's long overdue for them to win the Constructors. Mercedes, well out of it now. They had the best result here. First and second. I think Hamilton got fastest lap as well. So they pretty much scored maximum points. But they are so far behind. Doesn't really make any difference. They're not winning the Constructors. Everyone else, obviously, is way, way behind. Mercedes, I think I said in the last video that I did about Formula 1, Mercedes are kind of just stuck in 4th. They're too far behind Red Bull to catch them, but they're far ahead of everyone else. So their season's pretty much done. Really, it's between the drivers. Russell and Hamilton are pretty close together. I am fairly certain they could catch Piastri and Sainz in front of them if they haven't already. But otherwise, their season's pretty much over. Mercedes aren't winning anything this year. It's really just for honour at this point. And this was a great race for George Russell. He was brilliant all weekend. Mercedes were quick all weekend. And I don't know if it's a track-specific thing. Maybe it's just something about this Vegas track really worked for them. Or they were just really on it this weekend and they just nailed the setup. Whatever it is, they were very quick. They were brilliant. Both drivers did a great job. It's only Hamilton really screwing up in Q3 that stopped him winning this race. But Russell was brilliant all weekend. So, well-deserved victory for Mercedes at Las Vegas. Red Bull was struggling for pace at this race, but I think Verstappen did a great job to get 5th. It all started with them bringing the wrong rear rings, and from then on, it was always going to be difficult. They were too draggy, didn't have the speed on the straights. I think they'll be disappointed with the performance from Sergio Perez again getting knocked out in Q1, and it was honestly a struggle for him to make places during the race, and in the end 10th place isn't terrible, it's another point, but again it's just not good enough. And he's behind Yuki Tsunoda again, who isn't really, in terms of the championship, Yuki Tsunoda's in the top 10, Sergio Perez is only 8th. It would have made sense around the half plate, about the time they announced that Sergio Perez had a new contract, they should have swapped him for Tsunoda instead of giving him that contract. Because Tsunoda's performances this year have been very good, and yet he's kind of been sidelined by the talk of Liam Lawson and Franco Colapinto. Again, he's beaten both of them today as well. So, I cannot see any reason why Tsunoda shouldn't move up to Red Bull. His performances have been really good this year. He's made mistakes here and there, but he has been largely consistent. He's usually a driver around the top 10. RB had that sort of blip in the middle of the season where they sort of dropped further back and he didn't score points. But generally, when the car's been on pace, Tsunoda's been on pace. He's done a good job. He deserves to be promoted. I honestly cannot see a reason why you would pick Liam Lawson or Franco Colapinto over him, given that Tsunoda has more experience, he's more consistent. I think he'd be a great shout for that second drive. Sergio Perez should not have it and definitely does not deserve it. I would like to see him replaced for next year. I think Red Bull would be more competitive if they replaced Sergio Perez next year. And if I was going to make that choice, I would choose Yuki Tsunoda. I wouldn't choose. I'd put Liam Lawson and Franco Colapinto at RB. Sure, they're both very good drivers, but they need time. Even if you only keep Yuki Tsunoda in that seat for a couple of years, it's worth doing, I think. There's other great Red Bull drivers coming up as well. I think Isaac Hadjar's a decent driver. He has his moments and he's very emotional. But I think the Frenchman, he is very good. And they also have the likes of Oliver Goethe, who I think is a very good driver. Needs time. I wouldn't promote him in the next couple of years, probably. 2 years of Formula 2, I think, will do him a world of good. But I think he is a very good driver. And there are others in the Red Bull Junior program who are decent. So it's not like they're struggling for choice. In fact, I do not know why they've stuck with Sergio Perez as long as they have. I think they made the right call with Daniel Ricciardo. But I think in terms of the main Red Bull seat, they've made a mistake this year. Hopefully they rectify it for next year. Max Verstappen, 4-time champion, brilliant job. He did score enough points here. He was just doing the job, essentially. It was a safe drive. It was a struggle on pace, but he overcame that. And 4-time champion. He's a great driver. I don't think you can complain. I think no one else on the Formula 1 grid has had it as difficult as Max Verstappen in terms of just a backlash from Formula 1 fans to his success. He really is pound for pound the best driver on the grid and has been for the last 4 seasons, possibly 5, maybe even 6, maybe even 8. He is exceptional. In 2020, when Mercedes was still dominant, Max Verstappen was the only car that could keep up with them. He was the only car that caused them any trouble. In 2021, he had a tough fight with Hamilton. Controversial, yes, but he was still brilliant all year. He deserved to be the 2021 champion. 2022, 2023, he absolutely smashed the series to pieces. And 2024, it's been a tough fight again. He's been under pressure. He's made mistakes. He's shown his aggressive driving style, and he's been criticised for that. But he is still a great driver, and Red Bull are very fortunate to have him. And I think this year, with it coming out how difficult his life in motorsport is, how tough it's been growing up in a difficult environment, allegedly, which I wouldn't really want to go into here. I don't know all the facts, but it sounds like a pretty rough bringing up. I don't think anyone's had it as difficult as him, and yet his passion for motorsport is still there, plain to see. Crying when he won the championship. It's great that he still feels passionate about the sport. He talks about leaving Formula 1 a lot, but he clearly likes motorsport. If he's not racing, he's doing esports. I imagine once he's done with Formula 1, and maybe he will give it up young, I can see him going to other race series. Whereas someone like Lewis Hamilton, it's been more of a case of, as soon as he's done with Formula 1, I can't imagine him doing anything else. Mercedes have announced they're going back to the World Endurance Championship, but even if Lewis Hamilton wasn't going to Ferrari next year, I can't imagine him moving over to the World Endurance Championship. He'd give up. He's got so many other business interests now. He's more of a celebrity than a sports figure. I guess just having those extra options open to him, it's easier to step away from Formula 1, and yet he's sticking on for another couple of years at least. I think that's a mistake on his part. His form has definitely reduced over the years. Those comments from Toto Wolff about him being past it, and Toto Wolff came out and said it was taken out of context, but it's not wrong. Niki Lauda in the mid-80s, he was still a great driver. He was still Niki Lauda, but his results and the drives he was putting in weren't the same as they were earlier in his career. He was older. The passion for the sport was lessened over time. He was already one step out of Formula 1. Of course, he wasn't as good as he was 10 years previously, but he was still Niki Lauda. He could still put in a great performance here and there, but he was definitely over it. He was still Niki Lauda, but he had passed his prime. He wasn't the top driver he was. Lewis Hamilton isn't either. He's not the driver who was dominating the championship in 2017, 2018, 2019. He's still capable of doing the odd great performance here and there. He did a great performance at Las Vegas. He's had a couple in 2024. It's been much improved this year, but it's still past his prime. Alonso as well, way past his prime. He can still do a job. He's still a great driver, but he's still 15 years after his best, maybe less, maybe 10, let's say. You're not going to see the Fernando Alonso of 2004 fighting Michael Schumacher, 2005 at Imola fighting Michael Schumacher, those performances. He can still put in good performances as he did last year. He's had the odd moment this year, but it's not been as good with Aston Martin falling away a bit. But everyone has a shelf life. And Hamilton is definitely past his best. That's not to say he can't do it, but he's not as consistently strong as he was in the past. Yes, Mercedes have not had the best car for the last 4 years, but it's still been a decent car capable of winning, and at least this year he's done that. But I think the Lewis Hamilton of old would have done more in this car if he still had what he had then. He doesn't anymore. He's past his prime. It's a struggle. Ferrari, apart from the odd mix-up, I don't know what's going on with that Sainz pit stop. They seem to have gotten away with it, but I don't know if that's going to come back and bite them in the arse. They were lucky to get third and fourth, but it's good for their constructors, and I don't really have anything to complain about. I think they had the pace to win this one, but Mercedes were strong as well, so third and fourth is probably fair, and it's going to be interesting to watch them in the title fight for the constructors coming into the last 2 races. Everyone else on the grid, Alpine did a fantastic job again with Pierre Gasly just storming in qualifying. He was absolutely brilliant, but then broke down in the race. Massive shame for him. Ocon just not really there. He wasn't on the pace this weekend, and he was out of the points. Nothing special from him, and it hurts their constructors because obviously that's the other big fight going into the last 2 races is Alpine, RB and Haas, all very close together, fighting for 6th in the constructors and the money that that's worth. It's important to get good results in the last few races, and I think Alpine will be very disappointed that their engine did not survive with Gasly after he put in such a good performance in qualifying. RB, I've already talked about Tsunoda, brilliant job. Lawson, he was hanging around the top 10, couldn't quite get in, started to fall away towards the tail end of the race, but it was still a decent enough drive, and it was consistent this weekend, no crashes. It was a good enough job from him. Haas, Hülkenberg was brilliant on the pace throughout the race. He held off Hamilton and Piastri for a few laps at the start. Once it sort of organised itself into the usual sort of places, it was a great drive from him, more points. Magnussen, he had a scrappy race, had a couple of very close moments with Liam Lawson, but it was a good job from him. He was just outside the points. I think he will be disappointed he didn't score here. He could have done with a 10th place at least. But otherwise, it was another good weekend for Haas. Aston Martin, devastatingly poor. Alonso, near the top 10, but not really all that close. Stroll, he had his issues in qualifying. He was starting near the back. It was another poor weekend. He was behind Guan Yu Zhou towards the end, so it was as disastrous as it can be for Aston Martin without crashes or breakdowns. So it was poor. Williams, again, Franco Colapinto crashing. Great driver, but those mistakes need to stop because I think it's going to hurt his career. He doesn't have a seat for next year, and I think he could if he plays his cards right. During the race, though, he was fine and did enough. But Albon, again, he wasn't really on the pace this weekend, and another retirement for him. I think that's going to be massively disappointing for Williams, although I don't really think he was on for points. Stake, I think Guan Yu Zhou quietly did a fantastic job in this race. He was hanging around the top 10 for a fair while, and in the end, I think he finished 13th, which was a very good performance. In fact, all year, Guan Yu Zhou has been really quiet, and that's because the Stake car has no pace, but he has been doing okay. He's not been retiring from races. He's not been crashing here every other race. Guan Yu Zhou's been doing a fantastic job, just very quietly in the background, and I think that's probably cost him a place in Formula 1. He hasn't got a seat for 2025. That's really the biggest disappointment for me. He deserves to be there. He hasn't really been given a fair shake of the dice. But I think, honestly, if Guan Yu Zhou, if he could get even a reserve seat for 2025, just hang around Formula 1, try and pick up another opportunity if one comes his way. He's very good. He deserves to be there. It's very frustrating to see a driver like that given an opportunity, but not really being given a decent opportunity. He has done better than Bottas this year. Again, really outdrove him here. Qualified much better than he did. He was well ahead of him in the race. Bottas was last of the finishers, and you didn't really ever see him because he was so far back. Honestly, Guan Yu Zhou did a fantastic job, and I am honestly very sad to see him off the grid for next year. As for the race itself, it was okay. It was pretty dull for most of it, but it did have its moments. The first lap was probably the most exciting, with Magnussen and Lawson fighting. Perez did pull off a great overtake for double overtake again on Lawson and Magnussen, which was really the highlight of his season. Other than that, there was some intrigue with the pit stops, but otherwise, with Verstappen not really fighting when Hamilton and the Ferraris got past him, it really killed a lot of the excitement. Ferrari not being able to keep up with Mercedes, and they were sort of denied a fight with each other because Verstappen was in the way. Yeah, it was okay. The best stuff was in the midfield. Nothing stellar. I'm not very impressed with the Las Vegas Grand Prix. I wasn't impressed last year, and I don't think this race was really that great either. But we've got to have 400 races a year now, so I guess we're stuck with Las Vegas. But other than that, it was a pretty crazy race. As for other Formula 1 news, there hasn't really been a lot. There's news that with Michael Andretti stepping back in the Andretti organisation, that might help Andretti and General Motors get on the grid for 2026. That's ridiculous. If that was what's holding it up, shame on everyone involved. It's just really corrupt. You have a very successful race team backed by one of the largest car manufacturers in the world. That should be an automatic entry onto the Formula 1 grid if they so want it. They clearly do, and yet, money, that's holding it up. Ridiculous. Everyone involved should be sacked, launched out of a catapult or something to get rid of them as quickly as possible, because that's disgusting corruption and it's embarrassing. I think it's hurt the sport a lot. And yeah, everyone involved should be ashamed with themselves. Hopefully this is it and we just see Andretti Chrysler on the grid for 2026 now. But given how Formula 1 tends to work, I'm sure more disappointment is on its way. We only have 2 races left, Qatar and Yas Marinas. So we are definitely at year's end. Congratulations to Max Verstappen on a 4th title. The Constructors' Championship is really the most exciting thing still going on, although some of the top places are still up for grabs. Norris versus Leclerc, just about. So there is some intrigue going into the last few races. I'm not doing a roundup this week because there was only WRC and Stock Car Brazil on other than Formula 1. So I'll skip that for now. But I will probably talk about World Rally Championship at some point in the week. The Macau Crash compilation is coming. It's almost done. But because I've had a cold, it's kind of been delayed, as a lot of the Macau content was. And obviously, very soon, Formula E starts again. So Formula E content is definitely incoming. So with that, thank you very much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe and all of that business. Thank you to everyone who has. It took me 5 years to get 1,000 subscribers, and then this next year, over 500. It's crazy how quickly my subscriber count has grown, and thank you all so much for that. There's member-only content available if you so want it. I would wait a little while because there's only a few videos now. I'll keep doing them over the next few months. At some point, it might be worth it. Who knows? Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the Las Vegas Grand Prix, and have a good one. I'll be back very soon.